that okay?
Yeah. Yeah, we are fine. So, hello, Congressman Alan Lownthal. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for coming in to talk to me.
Nice to see you again.
It's good to talk to you again also.
Congressman, the EU invoice right now is in Cambodia to collect more evidence and collect more proof in order to process withdrawing and suspending EBA from Cambodia. Do you think that the U.S., plan or should do like the EU at this time?
Is the EU doing, is that the Cambodia Trade Act? And I've already introduced the Cambodia Trade Act, which is, the EU is further along than we are here in the United States on that. And that's to review whether Cambodia should receive preferential trade treatment, which they now have preferential trade treatment. And the EU is reviewing it. They're in Cambodia now. We've introduced the bill. The bill is now, I believe, in the Ways and Means Committee. Tomorrow, I will be going before the Ways and Means Committee to testify about the bill, to ask the Ways and Means Committee, because it's a bill that has to do with trade and preferential treatment. It has to come out of the Ways and Means Committee. And I'm going to advocate for the bill tomorrow in the Ways and Means Committee to move the bill forward.
So how much hope that you think that the bill will be passed at this time? That you think, or do you think that the bill will be like the HR 5754?
Well, I think members of the Congress in both the Senate and the House are much more aware of what's going on in Cambodia. The loss of democracy, the lack of free and fair elections, the expelling of the CNRP, the potential arrests of anyone who advocates for freedom and democracy. And so I'm not sure. The Trade Act, I've never really asked the Ways and Means Committee to do something, so I'll be in a better position after tomorrow to know whether we're going to move that bill out. I think the fact that the EU is already moving forward on this is a great benefit to us, and it will help me to convince the members of the Ways and Means Committee that it's a good move now to at least reach preferential trade treatment for Cambodia, because of what Cambodia has been doing in terms of the lack of democratic and human rights process. I think.
But I did. I'm sorry. I turned it off. Okay.
I think that there's we're further along than we are with the Cambodia Trade Act. The Cambodia Democracy Act is already passed out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It is now in the Judiciary Committee. It will be waived out of the Judiciary Committee. They're looking at it because of the sanctions. Remember, in the Cambodian Democracy Act, Congressman Yoho and myself, there are sanctions on people that are identified as violators of human rights. And I think that there's a good chance that we get that bill out of the House again. To find out whether that bill, remember, in the 115th Congress, we were able to move the Cambodia Democracy Act and we were very successful in moving that act out of the House of Representatives. But it never was taken up in the Senate. It's going to need to be taken up in the Senate, and we're going to advocate for that.
So if the bill passes, so what is the impact of that bill?
Well, there are two of them. Remember, the Cambodia Trade Act, the impact will be that it will have a tremendous impact upon Cambodia's ability to sell their goods to the United States. Right now, they receive preferential trade treatment. They will no longer get that. As far as the Cambodia Democracy Act, if that passes, and I think that's further along than the Trade Act in terms of passing, if the Democracy Act passes, I think that we will see the president identifying more people
To be sanctioned.
to be sanctioned. And that's really all about sanctions.
So you think at this time they will sanction Hun Sen, particularly and his family, or what?
Well, that I don't know. We've got to get the bill out first, and then we'll advocate to go, to fight, to look at Hun Sen and his family.
Yeah.
But right now, the important thing is Cambodia has violated the agreements that it made to have free and fair elections. We saw that rather than having free and fair elections, they arrested the leadership of the CNRP. They also denied the ability of the other CNRP leader to return to Cambodia, Mr. Rainsy. So you have both Mr. Sokha and Mr. Rainsy. The entire CNRP was dissolved by the highest court in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So I think the Cambodia Democracy Act has a higher probability of passing out
At this time.
at this time.
But
But I think having the EU play a leadership role on the Cambodia Trade Act will help us get that bill passed, and that will be following the Cambodia Democracy Act.
as you know, you are so well known in Cambodia community, also in Cambodia, regarding proposing the bill in order to take action on Hun Sen's government and so far.
Yeah.
But Prime Minister Hun Sen keeps saying that he will never bow down to exchange his integrity, sovereignty with the international aid or something. And for my question is, if the EU and the US suspend the GSP or the the EBA from Cambodia, how long does Hun Sen's government survive at this time?
Well, I think it'll be a tremendous impact upon the government. I think that right now the government of Hun Sen has not been penalized at all. The president did put some sanctions on some of the people, but I think that by putting more sanctions on Cambodia, by restricting their trade privileges, this will have a tremendous impact upon the government, and I'm hoping to see great changes in the government once they realize that, they sell most of their goods to the EU and to the United States, and if both the EU and the United States stand together, it will have a tremendous impact, and I think there'll be tremendous changes in Cambodia. Exactly what type of impact it will have on the survival of the government, I don't know. My biggest hope is to have free and fair elections. I'm not here to choose sides, but rather to say that Mr. Hun Sen had committed in 2013 to have free and fair elections after the last. He had agreed to what those reforms would be, and before last year, before allowing the reforms to take place and to have free and fair elections, he and his cronies and the courts outlawed the CNRP. Well, that's unacceptable.
But he said that 2018 was the real democracy's election. Do you agree with that?
That the election was a real democratic election?
In 2018.
It was a sham election. It was a phony election. I don't believe any of that. They won every single seat, I believe, in this election. They outlawed the opposition party. They knew, or they feared anyway, that if there were real elections, the people of Cambodia would not have supported the government. They would have supported the opposition party. And so our sense here is that the Cambodian people really want change. And the United States is just trying to put pressure on Cambodia to do what they promised they would do. We're not asking them to do any more than what they had promised, and that were fair elections and to allow the opposition party to operate freely in Cambodia and to have an election, not a sham election. That's what they had in 2018. It was a phony sham election.
So, if that is a sham election, so why does the U.S. Not so much, see any pressure on Hun Sen's government if there is, they, since after the election, there's only one bodyguard units to Hun Sen that have been sanctioned, but after that,
That's
we
why
don't
it's
see.
so important that we pass the Cambodia Democracy Act and the Cambodia Trade Act. We have to put pressure on it. We're not, the administration has lots of issues that they're dealing with outside of Cambodia. I would like them to do more in Cambodia, but they're not. So it's up to the Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, to begin to pass legislation that really puts pressure on the Hun Sen government. And that's really up to us. And so my goal right now is to get the Cambodia Democracy Act passed, and then to get the Ways and Means Committee to pass out of the Ways and Means Committee the Cambodia Trade Act. If we can pass both of those bills, it will put tremendous pressure on this government. And we will stand with the EU, and we will show the EU that we stand with them and not tolerate the horrible things that are taking place by Hun Sen and his government.
But Congressman, so far, the Cambodian spokesperson keeps saying that the U.S. bill, U.S. law have no influence on Cambodia. Do you think this comment correct, whilst Hun Sen's government pays millions of dollars hiring lobbyist group like Doug Harrison from Washington State to help lobbyists in the legislative branch or executive branch?
They are very concerned, the Cambodian government, that both the Democracy Act and the Trade Act will have a tremendous impact upon them. They may say that outside forces have no impact, but it will send a message not only to Hun Sen, it will send a message to the Cambodian people that we want to protest and we stand with them in their desire for freedom and democracy. And right now there is no freedom and democracy in Cambodia.
Congressman, I have learned from the Hills newspaper today, that issue on June 1st or something. I have learned that the former Congressman Ed Royce, has joined the lobbyist groups called Brownstein Hayes Fiber Check. Have you learned about that? And then it's so that Hun Sen spent like $772,000 for
A lot of money.
this year he spent more than $1 million for just lobbyist group. Do you think that Ed Royce, he used to so much slam Hun Sen's regime for abusing human rights, democracy, and stuff like that? Now he's joined the lobbyist group to help Hun Sen in legislative branch like that. You think that's going to be obstacle for the opposition party, also for the lobbying for democracy in Cambodia?
In a bipartisan way, Democrats and Republicans have stood together against Hun Sen and what he has done. Mr. Royce, as the former chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, stood with us and helped us. Actually, he worked very hard with me. The reason why we got the Cambodia Democracy Act was that Mr. Royce and myself went to the leadership of both the Democratic and the Republican parties and got that bill passed on the floor. So Mr. Royce has been a great friend for democracy in Cambodia. Now, I realize that he has joined a lobbying firm that Hun Sen has also reached out and has, I guess, contracted with. I'm not sure. I don't know any more than that. I don't believe that Mr. Royce has any contact with that. He may be part of this firm, which he joined before Hun Sen began to contract for their services. Hun Sen has a right to contract with people. I disagree totally with Hun Sen. I disagree with what he's doing. I'm going to keep fighting for democracy and freedom in Cambodia. But I'm also, my experience has been that Mr. Royce has been a champion for freedom and democracy. He has stood with us, And I do not know any more than that, but I don't believe that his joining that firm has anything to do with his changing any position or supporting Hun Sen's government. Mr. Royce has been very clear
But if he
his
changes
opposition.
position,
He's not going to change his position just because he's part of this firm. Maybe Hun Sen has not contracted to have Mr. Royce represent him. He has contracted to have other people in the firm. This is a large firm. Mr. Royce has been a great friend of the people of Cambodia and has championed democracy. And even though he's a Republican and I'm a Democrat, it's been an honor to work with him. And he has really, when I went to him about needing help to move our bills to increase sanctions on the Cambodian government, he stood with us. And he agreed. He helped to get that bill out. He was a co-sponsor. I have great faith in Mr. Royce. I don't believe Mr. Royce. And so until I know any more, I am assuming that Mr. Royce still believes in democracy and freedom in Cambodia, and he has nothing to do with Hun Sen's contracting with the firm that he's part of.
I think I will plan to ask Ed Royce more about what is his stand, what is his position right now. Yeah, I will. I will.
I can only tell you that Ed Royce has been a wonderful person to work with and has been a great champ. And he's been a great champion of freedom. And so I'm not going to toss him under the bus until I learn a lot more. Right now, I consider Mr. Royce my friend and a champion of human rights.
So finally, what would you say to the Cambodian people around the globe while
we have not forgotten them. We have introduced more legislation this year, both the Cambodian Trade Act and we reintroduced the Cambodian Democracy Act. Cambodia was the great hope for democracy, and Cambodia seemed to be moving towards democracy. Hun Sen has snatched that away from the people. I support the people, the Congress of the United States, and the Cambodian community that's in diaspora or that's here in the United States. We all support freedom and democracy to the people of Cambodia, and we're not going to stop. And it's now up to us to get the Cambodian Democracy Act and the Trade Act passed by the Congress. Then we'll have.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendation for the opposition party at this time? What should they do at this time?
The opposition parties in Cambodia? Well, I have to believe, first I have to say how proud I am of the CNRP for standing up, risking their lives for freedom and democracy, wanting to be the support of the Cambodia. I think that they should continue as much as possible that they can their opposition. I think it's very risky sometimes for Mr. Rainsy or Mr. Kem Sokha because they're being constantly attacked. But in any way that the people of the United States can show support for the people who are fighting for democracy, we shall do it. We shall pass legislation, and we will stand with the people of Cambodia. It is very important that the United States have democratic allies in South Asia, and the loss of Cambodia is not only a great loss for the Cambodian people, the loss of democracy in Cambodia. It's a great loss for the United States because we've lost the opportunity to work with a democratic country, and now it's moving away. And so we strongly support all those efforts to movement towards democracy again, and we're going to continue to fight for it. At the end of the day, we'll do what we can do, and what we can do is to sanction and to put restrictions on trade. And then it's up to Mr. Hun Sen to change his position. If not, we will continue to put pressure on him.
Thank you so much, Congressman Alan Lownthal, for your time. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.